What is going on, Wolfpack Nation? Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate y'all joining us here the day after Christmas, obviously. But again, we got to jump right into it because obviously we have a huge game coming up here against UCLA. So definitely looking forward to that. But again, my name is Leighton Smith. Macon unfortunately can't be here today as he's with family for the holidays. And our other buddy, Michael, here is actually joining us here in 1 second. But obviously we got a special guest here today, Cory Smith, editor for Pack Pride. So Cory, thanks so much for joining us today, brother.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man. How are you doing?
Hey, can't complain. It's holidays are awesome. Obviously, still riding high off of a huge win over Carolina. I mean, I think it was Alec Lower that posted a picture of him saying, "I watched my favorite Christmas movie," and it was him watching back the Carolina game. I'm like, yes, I love it. Yes. So yeah, no, doing great. But make sure if y'all haven't already, or those who are tuning in with us, make sure to send us any comments, questions that you have during this conversation here. We'd love to hear your thoughts, predictions as well as we roll here. So, but with that being said, jump right into it here. Michael, just want to make sure that you can hear us as well here, my man.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right, let's jump right into it here. So, again, huge game here against UCLA, obviously in San Diego, in Petco Park. In the Holiday Bowl. And it seems like for the most part too. One thing I do want to go ahead and say is it seems like for the most part, I've heard a couple of different reports of planes that are pretty filled with some red and white heading to San Diego. So it seems like we should have a decent crew there in San Diego, which is always a good thing. I know obviously Cory, unfortunately we were talking right before show, you can't be there, but I know that Alec from Pack Pie is going to be there in your place. But have you ever been to Petco Park or this bowl game for? Because this one's relatively new. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think the location. This is the first time they've ever played it at Petco Park. I know previously they played it somewhere in the area. I'm not exactly sure where, but I think this is the first time they're playing it at Petco Park. This is the first time I think San Diego had to get like the laws changed to be able to play football inside of the stadium before they booked it here at Petco Park. Yeah, it's something I was very much looking forward to going to. Unfortunately, had kind of diverted plans a little bit as most of us have over the last 20 something months now at this point. So yeah, I hate I'm not going to be there, but I'm glad we're going to have Alec out there. He got to go to Omaha earlier this year, so he's been able to go to some of the fun trips.
Yes,
well, I say fun as in he got to go to Omaha. The way it ended in Omaha, not so much, but it was nice to have somebody on the ground for that one. Yeah.
No, and by the way, too, my heart still bleeds. Because luckily enough, I was able to go when we played the first two games. But my heart bleeds for the people that flew out there for the second weekend to basically watch the Pac-13 game and then basically get told, "Hey, we're done." I can't even imagine that. So anybody who's listening, my heart still goes out to you guys for sure. I can't even imagine that. But yeah, so Justin says, "What's up, fam?" Then Justin Cook said, "I had to bring that up." So good job, Cory. I had to bring up Omaha. Sheesh, man.
Sorry, man. I was just mentioning that Alec went on that trip. That was it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, Cory. So it's first of all, I think a lot of good things have obviously happened between the Carolina game and the bowl game. But first of all, I had to bring up, that how funny is it still and a lot of people don't know this, that I actually had run into you because you were actually in the section right next to me at the Carolina game. I remember that this was right with 3 minutes left in the game. I came over to you and said, "Hey, Cory, how you doing?" And then we were talking about that. All of a sudden, it turned 180. So I don't know if this is like a good luck omen or something like that. But I mean, obviously things changed once that conversation happened. I don't know why, but something happened. So
I mean, I'm sure if we told Dave Doran that, he would at least make sure that we were there for the fourth quarter, right? For this game, like, hey, we'll fly you out. Just be there for the fourth quarter. That's all we really need you there for.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was actually the first game. I've told a few people this. That was the first game that I've attended as a fan since 2014. And the only reason for it was, they only had one credentialed media member for that game. I asked Alec to do it. Alec was there for that one. And then my wife was like, "Hey, we want to figure out tickets." We ended up getting tickets and had pretty good, a really good spot. And, my child was entering the fourth quarter, was like crying. She was so upset at how everything was going. And then luckily things ended up turning around. And you probably saw a side of me that I'm sure a lot of people have not seen as an actual fan, because I just don't get to do that type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, no, we were both screaming like there was no tomorrow. That is for sure. And and I'll say too, for me specifically, because right in front of me the entire game was this Carolina fan, but he was wearing nothing UNC. He was wearing no UNC shirts, no UNC colors. He was wearing neutral colors, and I'm like, listen, man, if you're going to talk smack to State fans, like you can't talk to smack State fans. You're not even wearing Carolina stuff. So get
At
out
least
here.
own up to it.
So,
Yeah.
own up to it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but obviously one of the things I wanted to jump right into is because I still cannot wrap my head around it, and that is the fact that it really does seem like it is very, very likely that Ikem Ekwonu was going to be playing in this game. I've heard reports of it, and then he's on the depth chart, and it's like literally I've been saying to myself, "There's no way he's going to play this game. There's no way." Because of any player that from NC State side that has had a reason to back out besides Chubb, it would be Icky to sit out. I think every State fan would say, completely understand. You're going to be probably a top 10, top 15 draft pick. Can't argue with that. But do we think that? Really, that it's? Because I think it's been kind of a trend over this last month or so about how great of a chemistry and how great of an environment it is. But do you think maybe a lot of it has to do with he wants to finish a 10-win season for the first time since 2002? Do you think that has a lot to do with it?
I do. I also, to go back to that, obviously we don't have anything confirmed at this point. Things could change, all the way up until the time. But yeah, everything that we've heard so far is that throughout practices, both Icky and Bam Knight have been out there practicing. And obviously Ricky Person's been out there. Ricky was kind of the other real question mark. Bam is a bit of a question mark just because of the fact that he could very well announce right beforehand, hey, I'm going to the NFL draft. I'm going to sit out this one. But with as more time goes on, I think the chances of everybody playing at this point, obviously with the exception of the guys that have been injured, they continue to grow and get greater. If you're gonna be out of the game, you might as well go ahead and announce it beforehand.
Right.
I remember Chubb was, he was one that announced it the day of. I think it started leaking the day of, and but times have changed a little bit since then. Most people just kind of since COVID, people just opt out without even thinking about it.
Right.
So, but I will say, the thing with Icky that he has a chance to still prove at this point is he has a chance to do it on a national stage. And I don't think a lot of people are really talking about that. This game is the only one that's on Fox. So Fox has been, pumping this game up. If you were watching any of the Christmas Day games yesterday, especially the one obviously on Fox, they were promoting this one. Fox has done a good job of promoting it. It is on a Tuesday night, so there's no games being played other than NC State, unless there's a COVID game moved from Monday or whatever. I don't even know what the circumstances would be, but as of right now, this is the lone game. So NFL scouts, anybody across the country that wants to watch this game, it's at 8:00 on the East Coast, 5:00 on the West Coast. So anybody and everybody gets a chance to watch this game and see what Icky's all about, and all the rest of these guys that have a chance to try to make it to the NFL. And I think that helps them in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially too, because there's been a lot of fluctuation of him, even potentially being like a top 5 draft pick, and then now you kind of see a little bit of him maybe drop into like the late teens or even 20s, and it's like so I still think he he still has something to prove for sure. Because I think he can be and should be the number 1 offensive line or offensive tackle guard prospect in the draft for sure. No doubt about it. And I know that even from a national writer perspective, that the praise coming in to Icky, and obviously winning the Jacobs blocking trophy is huge. He's the first winner of it since Jim Richard won it back in 1979. So I think that says a lot. And especially too, when we've had guys like Tyrone Prescott and Garrett Bradbury even recently that have been All-Americans, and so. I think
the issue for Icky that some of those guys didn't really have is, the fact that he is kind of seen as a tweener, and he hasn't been playing the guard spot really at all throughout his tenure. They tried very, very hard last year to keep him at guard, and then injuries like Tyrone Riley went down early on in the season. They had to move him to tackle, and so all NFL scouts have seen him at his tackle, and now there's some real talk of him, sticking at tackle at the NFL level. So he has another chance to showcase himself and show that, hey, I can compete with these guys. I can compete with, a UCLA defense that likes to rush the passer. I can compete with a UCLA defense that is top 26. I think they're number 26 overall in the country. So you can't say top 25, but a good rush defense. So, this is a very good matchup for him to prove himself, but also, as you said, go out and get a 10th win for this program and say that he was a part of every single one of them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, because even one of the things I was saying as well for all these guys that are considering coming back is, at the end of the day, there's no doubt that this team and even like the 2017, the 2018 team, that if we win an ACC championship next year, it wouldn't have been without those teams. Those teams had a lot to do with it. And even back to 2014, 2015, like guys like Jacoby Brissett, who we've said when we did our top 5 quarterbacks, we've said that it's hard to really not love Jacoby Brissett because honestly, where would we be as a program without guys like him? And so, but the one thing I said is at the end of the day, the guys that are on the team next year are the guys that will walk away with the rings, that I'll walk away with being, listed on the roster of being a part of, NC State's first ACC football championship team. And so I think, all these guys, they want to, first of all, be a part of that, but also too, I think that pretty much every single one of them have said, I remember even Josh Harris and Savion Jackson, they both came in together saying, hey, we're coming to win ACC championship, period. No question about it. So, I think that, again, it's such a great time right now to be an NC State football fan. I can't harp on that enough, how great of a time it is. I can't even wrap my head around how amazing of a chemistry there is, between these guys. It's unreal. Like every single guy that you've wanted to come back is coming back for the most part, besides, maybe your Rickies. But it's crazy right now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I see Justin Cook saying, don't jinx it. And you kind of did it at a certain point there. You said all the guys that come back next year are going to have their name on there.
Knock
and
on
it's
wood.
like, oh yeah, exactly.
Knock on wood.
But I will say this, to feed off your point there. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you here, but to feed off your point there, the excitement level for this football program, on the Pack Pride boards, we've seen a lot of people, asking, how do I join the Wolfpack Club, especially after the UNC win? A lot of people saying, how do I join?
Right.
The hope is to, all right, you got to increase the contracts. You got to increase Dave Doran's contract this offseason, which we're hearing there's a very good chance of doing it across the board for this entire staff, in particular for Tony Gibson and Tim Beck. But one of the things that I spoke to, pretty high up at the Wolfpack Club recently. And one of the things he told me was like, we haven't seen this much excitement and this much, ambition to get to the Wolfpack Club since, Phillip Rivers days. That kind of excitement is what you're seeing because, they had a chance around the Tom O'Brien years with Russell Wilson. And then, you had the whole saga of Russell leaving and Mike Glennon coming in and there was just kind of an unknown. Yeah. What you have now is a program that you're seeing built, and this is the second time they built it essentially, and you're seeing all these guys coming back. There's that much curiosity and wanting to be a part of helping this program to get there, more so than really almost 2 decades now at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's definitely great to see and refreshing to see. And, I think the first time I saw it this year was after the Clemson win, just the way that specifically just like Doran celebrated it himself. Like I've never seen him celebrate a win like that. So it definitely felt like program changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and especially, I think it's just a measuring stick within itself of when's the last time that fans have stormed the football field ever recently, much less storming twice in the same year. That's ridiculous. Like it's crazy to think that literally this offseason we did a things NC State fans never say. And one of our things was basically making fun of like, dude, they're letting us storm the field. Let's go. And it's like, yeah, they're never going to let us storm the field. And we stormed twice this year. It's awesome.
The fact that the goalposts are still intact from both of them is pretty remarkable too.
Indeed, for sure. So jumping into now a little bit of the game. So obviously UCLA is one of those teams. First of all, I think that looking at the ACC bowl schedule overall, that if I had to pick a team, maybe besides Iowa State, I think playing a UCLA team is a great measuring point, to kind of build off of momentum wise heading into next season. Mostly because, obviously, I remember at the beginning of the season, UCLA was one of those teams that everybody was really excited about, really hyped about, but that was mostly really after they beat LSU to go 2-0. But then after that, they lost to Fresno State, they lost to Utah, Oregon, Arizona State. So, kind of went from there. But again, at the end of the day, this is a very talented team led by a very seasoned coach in Chip Kelly. That I think that if there was a superlative for creativity, I think Chip Kelly would have one of the highest ratings. You watch his Oregon days, and that offense was insane. Insane. Insanity.
It changed college football.
Yeah,
it really did.
And they thought it would change. They thought it would change the NFL when he went to the Eagles.
Yeah.
And it did not.
No.
But yeah, and I'll say this for obviously Chip Kelly. This is the first year they've had a winning record since he got back to UCLA. Obviously they went through some pretty lean years before he got there. But there's some. It's funny. It's interesting. I talked to Mike Regalado of our 24/7 site over at UCLA. And one of the interesting things he told me, he's like, it kind of depends on who you talk to in terms of, where this team is with Chip Kelly, because, some people are very excited. They're like, hey, we're 8-4. We're, this is the first year we're going to start and everything's going to be great after this. There's a lot of people that are going, we're probably going to lose Dorian Thompson-Robinson after this year, because he's more than likely either going to go to the NFL or look to try to do something after this, because they've already brought in an additional quarterback. But, those 8 wins, really none of them came against remarkable opponents. All the losses they've had so far this season have all been against, literally the only quality opponents they had, unless you won a bunch, if you won a bunch, LSU in there, sure, but they also fired their head coach midway through the season because they didn't like the results they were getting. So, the losses they've had, really, it's not even just about the losses; it's about the wins too. Because LSU wasn't remarkable. You look at like an Arizona, Washington, USC, who fired their head coach. All of those teams were really. Every single one of them were losing. All of them had losing records. I can't remember what LSU finished at, but all of those wins were in Hawaii.
6-6, I think.
It wasn't good enough, obviously.
So this is a chance to. We've heard a lot in years past of NC State, Dave Doran. It's kind of a similar case where you've heard a lot of people like, hey, Dave Doran hasn't gotten it done because he hasn't won any game of note, because the teams have been bad at the end of the season that you thought were good. Got that monkey off his back with Clemson this year. And I would say a couple other wins too this year, but that's kind of what UCLA is going through right now. Hey, we haven't had a notable win this year. That this is the game for them, and they're putting a lot of stock into this one to try to beat NC State, a top 25 team that they can really rest their hat on so far this year.
And I definitely want to jump into this a little bit, but you kind of bring up a point about kind of getting the monkey off the back with a big win, and I would say one game that I kind of think of from last season that I think now that we look back at how that season ended out, that Liberty win was low key a really big win. Really big win. For them to go undefeated, and then undefeated besides us, and then beat Coastal Carolina in the bowl game, it's like, okay, that team was really, really good. And so I think for Doran to pull that game out, and also to pull that game out with the defense, because I know that especially when I was a equipment manager there during Doran's early years, that was the one thing that was really preventing Doran from taking the next step, is the defense, and specifically the passing game. And I think we had 3 interceptions that game, and we really held Malik Willis. That was a guy that everybody in the country was really worried about. So, but I understand that maybe like when somebody says Liberty, it's not like, whoa, Liberty, So, but low key, it was a big win.
Yeah, you have to pass 2 tests, and I'm not necessarily saying this is how I judge it, because I agree with you. I think the Liberty win last year should have been a signature win. I still think even though FSU finished awful that one season, I still feel like that a couple of those road wins against FSU should still be notable ones, just because it is very hard to win there. But I think when you talk about a signature win, it has to be number one against a quality opponent, and number two against somebody that people recognize. And the issue is, if you talk about that Liberty win 10 years from now, people are going to be like, I mean, it was Liberty. Like, congrats, you beat a very good quarterback, but the team itself wasn't that great. It's tough with NC State fans in particular.
I just had to bring that up because I looked back and go, man, that was a big win though, and I was there. That was a huge win. So, so really kind of diving in though. So obviously this UCLA team. So first of all, kind of looking at from the UCLA offense and state defense side, I think it plays very well because obviously UCLA's strength is hands down. I have a question about running the ball. That is their strength. That is where they are dangerous. Obviously led by a trio of rushing options, obviously highlighted by their dual threat quarterback and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But then, but also too, the one thing which I got to say is all three of these guys do not have short names. They're not simple names either. And so they got Zach and Britain Brown. And I can't even. I'm not even going to try to pronounce Zach's last name. I'll let you do that, Cory. But I mean, all three of those guys are averaging over 4.7 yards a rush, which is crazy. So basically, UCLA ranks 15th in the country in rushing yards per game. With 215.1, but we rank 24th in the nation in rushing yards per game given up with 124. So I think that it plays basically their strength against our strength, which is a great combination for sure. But I think even as well, if they were to throw the ball, I'm not necessarily too worried necessarily about that either. So it's kind of, you feel confident, for sure. And especially I think that linebacker, specifically Drake Thomas, is going to need to have a big game, leading the defense back there. But I think it really just comes down to discipline, staying in your gaps, take care of your assignments, don't do anything crazy, just do what you got to do. And I think that really is kind of the key from the defensive side.
Yeah, I've said this a few times. When I look at this offense, it still reminds me a lot of not necessarily the offense the way they run it, but the playmakers and the weapons that a team like Louisville had. You look at obviously Malik Cunningham, what he's able to do with the ball. They had some good running backs. They had two or three that they could roll out there and feel pretty good about. And then they also the thing was the passing game was effective, but they didn't do a whole lot down the field. Obviously, we saw them throw the one big bomb play, but that was also because Tony Gibson brought the house and just had two safeties in the backfield. So it was a little different. But when I look at this UCLA offense, Zach Charbonnet is his name. And
Charbonnet, there we go.
And it's actually Britton Brown, who's a former he's a former Duke running back, actually. So he transferred over there the last 2 years. He's ran really well for them. He's actually leading them in yards per carry with, I believe, just over 6 yards per carry, which is pretty strong.
That's
So when I look at this backfield, they've got a lot of guys, but only one of them can run the ball at a time. And that's why I agree with you. I think Levi Jones and I think Drake Thomas are going to be extremely important in this game. And I would even say, obviously off the edge for NC State, they're going to have to be able to stop them, in terms of trying to get the ball down the field too in the running game, because if they can, this offense really relies on, outside of that, short yardage situations, trying to get it to their tight end. They've got a guy in Nick Phillips that plays, that's been really good all season long. He's kind of he's been kind of a Thayer Thomas type of guy. He's got 10 touchdowns so far this season, and their tight end Greg Dulcich is just a massive human being. He's 6'3", 6'4", like 240 something odd pounds. So he's a big dude. And the one catch he had against LSU, the one big catch he had against LSU, caught it like 10 yards down the field and then ran it 75 yards for a touchdown. So they've got some guys. The thing is, they don't really throw the ball deep down the field. So that really plays into it's NC State defense's hands. They can bring the house because they can make sure tackles. They can't. They have to have more of the Louisville performance than they did the UNC performance, and being able to stop the quarterback and really limit what they want to do offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, and it's one of those things too that I think that, especially for NC State, that really limiting big plays is really, again, it's one of those momentum things. I think that's something that we can do, but again, I mean, I think that because again we do, I mean, especially on third downs, we do so well that again, I think that honestly that the one way to really get us is to really go down the field, take momentum, and really take the bull by the horns. And just like you said, that's not really UCLA's strength, but again, I mean, they have options. That's the thing, though. That's the thing that I kind of look at this offense and I go, I'm kind of a little bit, kind of worries me a little bit, is just because they have so many guys that can touch the ball and make plays. And especially, I mean, I think honestly their tight end, I mean, I think, whenever he does decide to go to the NFL, he can be one of those, tight ends that can easily be a plug and fill. Not necessarily be a stud tight end, but he's a guy that easily can go on any NFL team and be a filler, if need be, like kind of like a Cameron Brate, something like that. So I think
both those guys are really good at blocking too. Both those guys are really good at blocking, and that's going to be an issue too for NC State. Is you've got to be able to bottle them up inside, because if you let them get out on the edge. If you let them try to get out on the edge, you've got two guys that are really good at blocking on the outside. With Dulcich and Phillips is a pretty good blocking wide receiver too. But that's the thing. Like we said, they just don't have a lot of outside receiver options. They're not going to try to throw the ball deep down the field. So you have to be able to bottle them up and stop them, or else your offense is going to get a chance to get back on the field.
Right. Exactly. Michael, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I'm in agreement with you guys. I think it's going to come down to that they're being able to stop their rushing attack. I mean, they've got all three guys over 600 yards, and agree limiting those big runs, because like you were saying, Leighton, I mean, those big plays. You think the kickoff return against Mississippi State, that game is probably totally different if that doesn't happen. The pass Louisville, they're probably not even in that game, but. I agree with that. I agree with that momentum thing.
Which, by the way, too, definitely that was definitely a dime by Malik Cunningham. I got to admit that, on that deep pass, that was a dime. So again, it's like one of those things. Respect, gotta give respect where respect's due. So that was a dime for sure. So so now kind of jumping in on the NC State offense and the UCLA defense side, I think there's much more of a gap looking at statistically. Specifically, obviously, the passing game, where obviously we rank 19th in the country at 288.4 yards per game. UCLA ranks 111th in the country in passing yards per game given up at 260.2 yards per game. So, and I think, I mean, from everything I've been seeing, whenever people have talked about which way they're going, whether it's straight up or per the spread, that's the one thing they say, is that if they're picking NC State, it's because of the fact that gap in the passing game is so wide. And, especially too with guys like Emeka, Thayer possibly, assuming that we're probably not going to hear whether he's going to go to the draft or not until after the bowl game. I mean, those are guys that, if they are considering it, they need to have big games, for sure. And kind of leave that stamp. And even like a guy like CJ Riley, who, not to say that, because I think he's a guy that you look at his frame, you look at his build, you look at his, like 40 time and stuff like that. He's a guy that, I mean, an NFL team might could take a chance on. So I think, even a guy like him, could use a big game to go out if he can find one. So, I mean, for me, I think that just really that the passing game is so there, but also too the fact that we have so many guys that need to and want to have a big game. I think those are two big things that are going to play in our favor, come Tuesday night.
Yeah, and one thing I'll point out too, we don't know the full depth chart for UCLA at this point. We know that 4 players are out. One of those players happens to be Quantrez Knight, who is their leading tackler on the team at the DB position, plays cornerback. Right. So that gives NC State, even more chances to really attack either way. You've got a guy in Emeka Emezi on one side, Devin Carter on the other. So either one of them, whichever one gets the least experienced DB, go attack that side of the field. Keep attacking that side of the field, and then that opens up things across the middle for guys like Thayer Thomas. Some of your running back passes, even some of your tight end play. So a guy like Trent Penix could have a huge game in this one. He's healthy. He's ready to go. He obviously was dinged up a little bit the last few games. So, Devin Leary said earlier this year his favorite option is the open guy. So we know that if anybody gets open, that's exactly who they're going to go for, because he has confidence in everybody across the board. That's why he's thrown for 35 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, that's right. So, and again, I mean, and it's one of those things that, I mean, obviously there's no doubt that Leary has started to figure some things out, especially later in the year, and especially with Emeka. I mean, even heading into last season, obviously look at the Pitt game last year. And so, I mean, there's no doubt that, that even Leary understands, that what this game means for guys like specifically Emeka, I think has the highest ceiling in terms of draft stock. So I think that, it's simply just Leary and Mecca going out there doing what they've been doing. I mean, I think there's been many games where Mecca's seen double-digit targets, and don't be surprised if they do the same thing, this game either. But I mean, I think even as well, and seeing a guy like Chris Tootle, who for me has been remarkable this year for sure, from the tight end position, and not only too because of necessarily how. I wouldn't say he's been amazing, but I think that that what he's done combined with how young he is really exciting for me, because I know that obviously losing Kerry Angeline last season was like a big because we didn't really have necessarily somebody behind him. Now Dylan Parham was solid for sure. I mean, he was a solid guy that I know that even me myself I was very excited about. I think he's had a role, but to have a guy that's young like Chris Tootle that heading into next season and even probably the year after, to have a guy that you could probably rely on at the tight end position is very exciting, for sure, to kind of have that hole filled.
Parham's been more of a blocker this year, and obviously he's been in and out because you do have guys like Chris Tootle, who unfortunately has recently been seen in a sling. So I don't know that we'll necessarily see him in this game. We'll see. I know Trent Penix was in one prior to the Wake Forest game and still came out and played. So we'll see. But the thing is, I mean, you've got a lot of options at the tight end position, and that is a huge thing for Todd Goebel. He has really, he's had a little bit of time because he's been mentoring Kerry Angeline. Kerry has been kind of the go-to guy, and he's had some guys in the background that have been waiting for their opportunities, and obviously they've showed out this season. And I think it helps to have more options there than just the one guy and Kerry. But he's also, I mean, Todd Goebel, like, he's been sneaky one of the best assistants on this entire team for several years now. And I don't think a lot of people give him enough recognition for that, because he's also the special teams coordinator. And, when you happen to have the best kick return team in the country, that, I mean, obviously a lot of that has to do with Bam Knight, but there's a reason for it. There's a reason why he's getting all those open opportunities and being able to run down the field, and also having one of the best punting units in the country too.
Yeah. Well, and especially too, talking about assistants here, I know that, again, I was, my first year being a part of the equipment staff was 2013 when Doran had came on, and really looking back at that staff, specifically, looking at like, just the assistant overall, and Ryan Nielsen specifically, that I think is, to me, one of the best defensive line coach I've ever seen with my own eyes, but I mean, obviously Charlie Wiles, his resume speaks for itself. But then, with guys like Des Kitchings, Eddie Faulkner, I mean, look at what Clay White's doing at South Carolina, which has been a huge surprise for sure for me personally. So, I mean, like, that was a really great assistant crew, but I mean, looking at this one now, I mean, obviously with Tim Beck and, like you said, Todd Goebel, who's been low key quiet. Tony Gibson has been, one of our best defensive coordinators we've had in quite some time, and Joe DeForest, look, I mean, I've been very thrilled with what he's done with Tanner Ingles specifically, but even filling in, that secondary safety position, whether it's Khalid Martin or whoever it is, that, I mean, they've done a great job, and I think that even having Joker in there, replacing George McDonald, he's been doing great, and specifically on the recruiting trail, it seems like. But, and again, all these guys, as far as we know, I mean, unless something happens out of nowhere, it seems like they're coming back next year, which is, again, it speaks for itself. But I mean, I think it really does speak for Doran, really, about, I know his phrase is always, when he always tells players, when somebody leaves, I'm going to find somebody better. And I think he's really held true to that, even as tough as it seems to be at times, looking at this assistant crew.
I would like to know what his interview process is like, because it apparently works. I mean,
It works.
really the only down year that NC State has had, in the last several years has been the 2019 season, and that was not necessarily because you had bad assistants. It was more so because they were just guys being put in spots where you're trying to take a round peg and fit in a square hole. And that's what ended up happening when you had two offensive coordinators, two defensive coordinators. It just didn't work out. And we've seen those guys go on to have success since then. Obviously, Des Kitchings now, going to South Carolina and now being with the Atlanta Falcons and what they've done at the running back position. Look at a guy like Cordero Patterson. That's just ridiculous. And what they've done with him. And then, you look at the defensive side of the ball in that 2019 season too. Like, you had Dave Huxtable still, and they let go of Dave Huxtable after that year. But really, one of the big reasons why they were having issues because Dave Huxtable was running Tony Gibson's defense. And Tony Gibson, since then, has had more success than really any defensive coordinator that I can think of in recent past for NC State. And that's, those were all guys that were on that staff that year. And they've still went on to find success. And that's because, as we said, Dave Doeren has just really done a fantastic job of finding guys and fitting them in with the system. And he does the exact same thing in recruiting too.
Well, especially too, because I mean, I know when Tony Gibson came to NC State, everybody's first immediate response was, well, he came from West Virginia, where the Big 12 is the no defensive conference, and so you're going to hire a guy from the no defense conference, to come coach here, where we have Clemson, with Trevor Lawrence here, you're crazy. And then, I mean, holy smokes! Not only what he's done on the defense side, but what he's done from the just coaching side of losing Peyton Wilson, losing Isaiah Moore, and you having a guy even like Devon Betty, who's, I know he won, I think it was like a freshman of the year during the superlatives or something like that. But I mean, again, it's insane that literally you have Peyton Wilson, Isaiah Moore, Drake Thomas, Levi Jones, Devon Betty. I mean, that's 5 guys right there that I think any Division I school would easily take, would not even bat an eyelash at it. So it's unbelievable.
Again, the job that Tony Gibson and really the rest of the staff has done, because they've had to. I mean, it's obviously the linebacker position has been hit the hardest, and that happens to be the position that Tony Gibson coaches as well. So it's been across the board, and they've found ways to. I mean, hell, ended up being the number 1 overall scoring defense. So. In the ACC, so that's a pretty good job, I would say.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, too bad. And you're getting almost all of them back next year too. So
that's right, Michael.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, Doeren hiring talent around him is one of the best qualities a coach can have. I mean, obviously these aren't comparable, but I mean, Nick Saban does it all the time. His coaches leave all the time, and he consistently still has teams that perform at the top level. And it seems like, to a much lesser degree, Doran's been successful at that too.
Yeah, it's just no nonsense, guys, and that's kind of the quality he has along with Nick Saban. I wouldn't say, I'm not trying to compare the two of them per se, but because obviously, but I will say, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that he has to his credit is just he doesn't deal with the nonsense of it all. He's like, look, man, And when he had to change the staff over, obviously that was a big thing that he had to do after the 2019 season.
Yeah,
he did that. He went out. He found the guys that he wanted. He went. I mean, honestly, he gave the reins to Tony Gibson and told Tony, find the guys that you want. Let's bring them in here. Let's talk to them and let's get it figured out together. And that's obviously something they did in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. So now want to kind of talk about one more side of the ball, to make sure we kind of, preview everything for this game. And obviously, because there's a lot to talk about with this side of the ball. If there wasn't, I probably wouldn't bring it up. But special teams wise, there is a lot to talk about with both these teams specifically. And so obviously, I'll kind of highlight it. But basically, UCLA ranks 7th in kickoff return average at 29.1 yards a game. State ranks 1st in kickoff return average at 34.4 yards per game, obviously highlighted by 2 kick return touchdowns. So definitely shout out to Bam on that. But then, obviously UCLA has a guy named Casimir Allen that they highlight and I mean, is electric. There's no doubt watching him play, watching him that he's he's something to watch. Let's put it that way. He's something for football fans to keep an eye on. But then even on the punt side as well, UCLA actually ranked second in punt return average at 27.6 yards per punt return. And then NC State ranks 48th. So that's the one that's the one where it's like, okay, it's not bad, it's not good, it's there. But again, I think Thayer Thomas this year, I mean, first of all, as far as I remember, he didn't have any drop punts or anything like that, which is great. So I think that then that's all you really need to ask for is at least that. So
barely any opportunities to actually return punts. So.
Right. So I mean, it's like it's not like Thayer's done bad. He's just done what he's needed to do, which is, hey, we'll take it all day and twice on Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, are we worried at all, Cory, that literally the first two drives are not even going to be drives, it's just going to be a kickoff return back and a kickoff return back, and it's going to be 14-0 with 15 seconds on the clock? I mean, it's looking at it, it's like, I mean, that wouldn't be insane to really think about,
Yeah. Well, I will say this, and I'm not trying to point out that UCLA hasn't played many quality opponents or hasn't beaten any quality opponents, but there's a lot of what you're seeing on film is against some not great special teams play out of some Pac-12 teams. I mentioned earlier Arizona, we mentioned earlier Washington. These are teams that everybody just beat up like a bully so far this season, and I mean, Arizona for a while there had the longest defeated streak in the entire country, and somehow pulled out a win this season. So those are the type of games you're playing. But I will say, for NC State, the big thing too is you have some film of these guys. Nick Phillips has been another player that's been in on those punt return units at times so far this season. So when I look at what NC State is going to do from a special team standpoint, I don't think you should expect the same thing that you saw against Mississippi State because of the fact that this is a game where NC State, like I said, has a lot of film on these guys. They've seen what these guys try to do. They've seen how they're going to try to get the ball down the field through special teams. So they're planning for it. You also have one of the best punters in the entire country in Trenton Gill, a guy that very well should have been considered for All-American. Was easily not so far this season, but really strong play from him. I think he was first team All-ACC if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
Yeah. So that to me helps NC State in the sense that they've been able to kick the ball well after with the exception of one squib kick against Wake Forest, which is still questionable. But I mean that's that's what I'm looking at. Is there's a lot more film for NC State, and there's a lot of time to prepare for this special teams unit, and I don't think Todd Goebel and his unit are going to have issues with it.
No. Absolutely. Well, and again, I mean, I think you definitely bring home the point about Trenton Gill, and I mean, really how he's the X factor. I think honestly, you look at a lot of games this season. I mean, and I really don't know that a lot of these wins he made a difference. And I mean, when honestly do punters usually make a difference, of a win or loss? But I mean, I can easily say with Trenton Gill this year that I mean, there's been a couple times where it's like, wow, I mean, he's literally flipped the field in positions where you didn't really expect the field to be flipped. So so definitely exactly. So Benjamin Orman says, "What's up?" He says, "What's up to Cory Layton?" So what's up, Benjamin? And also to Russell says,
Michael, that's cool, man.
Yeah, no, come on, Benjamin. Michael's over there. And then Russell says, thank you to all you guys for responding, interacting with your fans on social media. It's appreciated. Well, absolutely. Hey, at the end of the day, hey, we're Wolfpack Nation all together, but it's no tier system here. We're all Wolfpack Nation family here, so absolutely. And hey, again, we got to watch out for each other. Again, hey, being an NC State fan, it's understood there's highs and lows. So, hey, we all have to support each other through the highs and the lows, so that's a given. So thank you, Russell, for tuning in. So wanted to kind of go ahead here before I know there's a couple of other topics I wanted to kind of discuss here at the end, but obviously we can't finish this preview without talking about predictions. I know that Cory, you guys did a preview and prediction video through Pack Pride, so I'll leave it up to you whether you want to repeat it or if you want to just get people to go check it out on your podcast, and maybe that'll be better to help you out. Just kind of be like, hey, if you want to hear Cory's prediction, maybe go check out Pack Pride's podcast and check that out. It's definitely a must listen for sure, y'all. But and by the way, Michael Benjamin says, sorry, Michael, it's up to you. So,
okay, thanks.
So Michael, I'll let you go first. What's your prediction gonna be for this game?
One thing that we didn't talk about on offense was, obviously the mismatch is with our passing game versus their passing defense. But, I think we have an opportunity to run the ball pretty well against these guys, assuming, Icky and Bam and Ricky, they all end up playing. But, we said UCLA's leading tacklers out. And obviously our numbers weren't great running the ball this year, but it almost seemed like that was more by choice and not that we couldn't run the ball in some games. But so I think I wouldn't be surprised if we come out and run the ball a lot, just because, like we said, it seems to be everybody's expecting the Devin Leary to go off. But so I do think we'll win the game. You want a score prediction?
Of course.
Exact score?
Of course.
I'm going to say 35-24 Wolfpack.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking in the same range. Obviously, there's two things that really stand out to me. First of all, because I'm a guy that I love to watch the Vegas line, see how it moves. How much is bet, how much does it move, etc. And the one thing that stands out to me is that the line actually opened up at State being favored by 2.5, and then it got dropped down to 1.5. But yet two things have happened. First of all, 67% of the money has been bet on the NC State minus 1.5. And also, too, it was announced that 4 players are out for UCLA. True. And Icky is more likely coming back. So it's odd to me that the line hasn't moved a little bit more. It's maybe like the 3-4-ish area. So that's the one thing that's kind of concerning to me, because obviously, if there's one lesson that everybody should know, if they don't know already, is that Vegas knows everything. And so, if the line hasn't moved, that to me, that is like that's interesting. So I'm going to be a little bit more conservative and say that we win more like probably 31-28 is what I'm feeling. But again, I mean, if the line moved a little bit more, I would probably say more maybe like the 7 to 10 point range win. But with that line coming in, it's like so I'm going to lean more like the 31-28 area. But so Cory, I'll let you. I know I kind of spoke for you, but I mean, are you okay with that plan of letting people tune into your podcast? You want to hear your preview or your prediction? Okay.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, honestly, I'll say my thoughts on it. I mean, a lot of times on our podcast, we ask the other person that's on it to give theirs, and then I just kind of share my thoughts on what they said. Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at an actual prediction here, I'm kind of in the same area as you. I think here, Leighton, I believe for I'm going to say somewhere around 38 to maybe 38 to 31 or 38 to 34. I think this is a tight game in terms of UCLA is going to be able to score, but I think NC State's offense is able to do a lot more, in particular with a guy like Devin Leary being able to throw the ball all over the place and them having a cornerback out, leading not just a cornerback, but your top cornerback for this team being out in this one. I just think is too big of a blow for them that NC State is probably going to do the same thing they've done a lot this season. Come out, try to establish a run, try to get it going, and hopefully, make Michael look good here in the sense that they can run the ball. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, all right, let's try to establish a run. If it works, it works. But you have a ton of talent, in terms of this passing game, and I think it's just going to end up, catching up to UCLA. I think Devin Leary throws for 3 or 4 touchdowns in this one again. Really pushes that record to a point where it's going to be really hard to catch him. I think they have a chance to win this game outright, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and especially too, when I think that at the end of the day, the one thing that has worked has been throwing the ball. But again, you can't necessarily say that, because especially with a guy like Bam and a guy like Ricky, who are both, Ricky is going to the NFL draft, but definitely I think with Bam, I think it's pretty much been said that if his draft stock is good enough, then he'll go. So every run, every yard matters. So that's why even though I say, hey, listen, you have guys like CJ Thayer and Emeka that are looking to have big games, and Leary, is definitely more than talented enough to feed that, and it's worked all season, that, go with that. But I would say, just like you were kind of saying, Cory, that at the end of the day, you have two guys that are obviously talented enough in the backfield in Ricky and Bam that can do it, especially assuming that Icky does truly play, then that's huge for run game for sure. I mean, he's the best run blocker in the country, period. That's, in my opinion, there's no argument there. So to have that, I think, is a huge game changer. So so basically, I think all we're saying, Wolfpack Nation, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, it's going to be an entertaining one. There's going to be points on the board, but hey, I wouldn't be too upset if NC State defense can hold UCLA's offense a little bit more at ease, and even what we're predicting here, for sure, that'd be huge. But one thing though, which I wanted to kind of talk about here with with a little, like 10 minutes left or so here on the live stream. Obviously, the news broke today that Boston College and ECU game got canceled, and then the Virginia versus SMU game got canceled as well. So it was definitely a blow. Specifically, I think for most State fans, honestly, I think that most of us would probably looking forward to that Boston College ECU game, just because, I mean, again, it's the teams down the road that we're all very much aware of. It's a team that we're playing in the first game of the season next season, and it's against an opponent that I think everybody in the ACC has respected, for the most part, especially, Phil Jakovic. I mean, he's a great quarterback, no doubt about it. But I mean, it definitely was a blow for sure. I mean, I think for me, to not be able to watch that game today, and my heart definitely goes out to all the seniors, all the players, the bowl game itself, because I know that they're all disappointed that they can't play this game. So my heart definitely goes out to all of them. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, Cory, I mean, do you kind of, I mean, it's kind of tough to really kind of wrap your head around the situation, because again, I mean, last year, I mean, it was really an oddity to really have many games at all, get canceled, and then you have two bowl games that are ACC's first two bowl games get canceled, not just postponed but canceled. So it's tough to wrap your head around that. So it's hope of not necessarily an omen to come, knocking on wood there,
Yeah, I agree, and we've been kind of keeping an eye on UCLA because obviously we've seen what's going on with their basketball program. They've canceled multiple games. I don't think they're playing another game until early January. So that's, I think, been 2 or 3 or 4 games canceled so far for them, or postponed, because I think a few of them they're trying to get, moved back. But yeah, I mean, and they've now had 4 players that have been out or, listed as out due to COVID. They also were expected to arrive at a certain time, I believe 5 p.m. Pacific time, the other night on Friday night, the night before Christmas. And then, they didn't show up. So they were delayed, and now there's been some, concern about that. Is that due to additional testing? Will they get the results back? So they've been kind of a closed book when it comes to releasing any information. Most of what we know is from players saying they're going to opt out and they're not playing because of this. But as of right now, that's kind of where things stand. I agree with you. I mean, I think the worst part of all of this is the fact that all these kids, all these coaches spent time away from their family during Christmas. Obviously not everybody celebrates Christmas, but a lot of these kids do. They want to be around family, and they ended up, traveling to these bowl sites. Fans have already traveled to these bowl sites and, are no longer going to be able to watch a game or have any reason for doing all of this stuff. So,
yeah. Well, especially because, I mean, they canceled it like today or last night or whatever it was. I mean, it really was last minute. Yeah. So, I mean, it really was last minute. So, I mean, I can't even imagine, being a Boston College or ECU fan and traveling there, and then you wake up in your hotel room the next day and now we know a little bit something about that. Not going to bring up where or for what team it may be from, but oh man, that is, that's a tough one. So, and then one other thing which I wanted to ask you too, Cory, in your opinion, how vital is it that State beats UCLA? Like, is it that do you see them as that they need to win this game for next season, or is it more of a we really want to win for next season? That's not necessarily imperative. Like, what's your kind of mindset on this in terms of how important this game is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's significant for a number of reasons. Number one, obviously, you want to win a bowl game. You want to go out. You want to finish. You create that momentum going into the offseason that you can't create unless your name is UNC, apparently, and you lose a game with couple backups and everybody feels really good about you. We saw how that worked out. But so that obviously helps in a big way. It obviously helps when it comes to recruiting because you can go out and you can say, hey, I'm the first coach or the second coach in NC State history to win 10 games. First coach in NC State history to win, 9 wins 3 times. We've now broken through that ceiling. We're trying to do that again next year. We need you here so that we can, compete for ACC championships and potentially national championships in the future. Like that's your sell at that point. And it really helps in the sense that you do have that 10th win. You set a new mark for NC State. You set that bar. I mean, we've heard Doran talk about it so many times, trying to get to these, these levels that NC State has never reached before. Obviously, they've already gotten to, 10 plus wins in the past. They got to 11 wins. So you're not going to set the all-time wins record in a single season, but you can do it with less games, which is not something that team was able to do. They had an additional game on top of everything. They finished 11-3. I don't think a lot of people remember that. This team has a chance to finish 10-3, and really kind of push that momentum into next year, and that is something that is really going to be important for this program too.
Yeah, well, especially too when you add in the fact that we went undefeated at home for the first time since 1986. Because I know that is, I mean, and literally the fact that we've had 10 wins in a row at home. So I mean, I think that really. When you talk about environment, that first of all, the mix of, I think the fans overall, like I know that this year that, especially at the beginning of the season, Doran really challenged the students and the fans to stick around and be around for the entire game. And I know for me personally, from being there for every minute of every game, being in the stands, that student section, but fans overall have done a lot better this year. So first of all, hats off to Wolfpack Nation for sure on that, even in the blowout wins or whatever it may be, y'all stuck around. So definitely, hats off. But I mean, to also basically say, I mean, hey, to prove it, I mean, we've won 10 games in a row at home. I mean, there's not many teams that can say that. Not many.
I want to point out too that there was a lot of coaches across the country challenging students because there's a lot of students that literally, I mean, you have an entire class of freshmen and sophomores that going into this year had never attended a game as a student.
That's true. Yeah.
So this was their first real opportunity. It's like, hey, this is what your expectation is. So there's, you're talking about like up to half of all the students that are there that had never gone to a game going into this one. So I mean, it was significant for him to try to, establish that. And we saw it really come to fruition against Clemson, because that was the first game where you really needed it. And it was massive. So.
It was. So, yeah, no. And so I think that, really, and also too, I mean, again, the one thing, and I know, Cory, I'm sure you probably have heard us say this here on our live stream, but I definitely want to just say it again, that the level this year, even heading into even last year as well, the amount of times where we, would have, dug ourselves into a hole, but found our way out of it. I think that of anything says enough, because when you look at Clemson, and specifically, during the Kelly Bryant, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, era, is that they know how to win. They know how to find a way to win. Like, against us, for example, I mean, we punched them right in the mouth in 2018 and intercepted the ball, went down. Kevin Harmon had a big catch. And I mean, I think most teams could have easily been like, oh man, okay, this is not good. But I mean, they found a way to win. I know obviously, a lot of people say, the referees helped it, blah, 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 whatever. But then they found a way to win. And I think that looking at us, I mean, how many times were we down at halftime? Like this year, I mean, Wake Forest, I for me, that was a huge game just because of the fact that, I mean, there was times where easily we could have folded and we found a way to get back. And honestly, we should have, you even mentioned that, we should have had an opportunity there to go down and make something happen. And we did. And I mean, I think Carolina was just the absolute creme de la creme, against opponent that I think any of us would have absolutely just enjoyed. Like it was just a combination of how we won, but also to who we beat and how that team was shaped. Like all three of those things together made that win just so amazing, and I mean, just like, everybody was talking about Sam Howell and, his salute off to the fans of getting him a win at Carter Finley. And yeah, I mean, it really shows just, again, not only how talented this team is, but how disciplined this team is and how much this team has developed, into knowing how to win. It's so that's kind of my 2 cents on it. So I'm sure you probably heard that. I'll say that once or twice before.
Well, and that'll also be huge for next year too, because you have a lot of guys that are experienced in those spots. You have, I mean, I don't know that we've seen a quarterback really. I mean, I know Mike Glennon had some big games, and I know obviously Phillip Rivers did. Russell Wilson had some big moments, but I don't think we've seen a quarterback that I felt has been as clutch as Devin Leary in a really long time. And people can argue that however you want to, but I mean, the guy's already led 3 game-winning drives at NC State and nearly had a chance at a fourth. If you think about, Wake Forest, if they get the ball back there, he has a chance to try to lead them in a fourth. And you never see him. I think you never see him really out of sync or, lose any confidence down the stretch. And I think that's going to be really important going into next year too, because not only does he have the confidence, but the team around him has the confidence that, hey, we could win these games when Devin Leary's back there. And you've seen the offense be able to do it time in and time out.
So one last question. Go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, I think he almost had another one against Miami. I mean, that game, we were driving down the field and then he had a Devin Carter drop and then we got stopped on 4th down, but that could have been another one there.
Yeah,
it could have been.
I agree.
So now, one last question. I know we're over time here, but I want to ask this one more question. I think you're kind of hinting at it, but assuming that Leary has a season, obviously this season he broke Phillip Rivers' single season passing touchdowns record, but assuming that he has a year like this year, next year, do you think that because right now it's pretty much, because we even came out with top 5 and basically we had like Phillip Rivers, Roman Gabriel, and Russell Wilson kind of in like that top 3, and then you had like the Mike Glennon, Ryan Finley, Jamie Barnett, and Devin Leary in like the next 4. But do you think that if Leary has a season like he did this year, that he could enter that conversation of, potentially being right there, if not even potentially surpassing Phillip Rivers, as crazy as it is to say? Looking at college alone, obviously NFL, Phillip Rivers did a lot in the NFL, so you can never guess that. But I mean, it's just like you were saying. I mean, this guy's been money throwing the ball, absolute money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anybody necessarily surpasses Phillip Rivers, and it's funny. You could probably go back to this next year and maybe, pull this back up and everybody's like, hey, he actually did. But I would say right now he has a chance to put himself in the argument for being, at the very least the second best quarterback in NC State history if he has similar numbers to this year. Because, I mean, not only has he thrown for a ton of touchdowns, he's also, not had issues in terms of interceptions a lot. Several of those have been, late in halves. Whether trying to throw one just on a Hail Mary. I think 2 of them were on Hail Marys. One of them was that freak one, on the outside. He literally, I mean, he should have, against Wake Forest, hits his guy, but gives up on the route. I can't remember who it was. Kind of gives up on the route, and the DB jumps it and gets the interception, barely tiptoes on the sideline. So, I mean, his playmaking ability and his, obviously mental awareness of the game is huge for NC State too. And I think, if he has, 30 plus touchdowns next year, I mean, we're talking about nearly 70 touchdowns over the course of 2 years. That's pretty remarkable stuff. And also he's not going to be shaking off the rust to start next year unless he, God forbid, knock on wood, doesn't have an injury in the offseason. But you look at next year. I mean, he has a chance to do that. And I'm seeing a question from Ben Orman here too. Who transfers, Aaron or Ben? I don't think. As of right now, we haven't heard either one of them necessarily transferring. Now, one thing we did hear throughout the season was Aaron's kind of emerged as the potential number 2 guy there. And you're going to have a little bit of a log jam with a guy like MJ Morris coming in next year, Lex Thomas coming in the following year. So you have a little bit of a log jam at quarterbacks. I'm sure one or the other will probably look to say, I'll go somewhere else. But, Aaron McLaughlin was Tim Beck's guy. So, if there's anybody that he's going to be trying to hold on to, it's probably going to be Aaron McLaughlin in the long run.
It's a good problem to have too many quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's a good problem.
And he was the lead recruiter for MJ Morris too. So you've got two guys coming into the room next year that'll be guys that he recruited from start to finish.
Absolutely. Even though, again, it would be tough for me to let Ben go, just because obviously, Ryan. I mean, he's one of the NC State greats. No doubt about it. So I can't argue that. But again, just like you said, it's a great problem to have. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And Cory, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you joining us on this conversation. I hope definitely those who were listening or checking it out, definitely hope it gives you a little bit of insight in terms of what we're hopefully going to see here on Tuesday night. But definitely looking forward to it, 8 p.m. on Fox on Tuesday night. So make sure you go check that out. But Cory, if you wouldn't mind, I know I'll let you kind of have a plug right here for Pack Pride, where to check you guys out. If State fans don't already know where to check you out, which I can't imagine there's many. So.
Yeah, well, obviously you can follow me on Twitter at Cory Smith. R at the beginning. My first name is Robert. I was trying to find something to distinguish myself from, the Cory Smiths of the world out there.
Yeah.
And Cory is not spelled with an E; it's Cory. So for anybody looking out there, but yeah, I mean obviously you can find us at Pack Pride on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We don't have a TikTok, so don't look for us there. We probably will not have a TikTok. Sorry to any people upset by that, but. Yeah, you can find us there, obviously, and at packpride.com. On the message boards, we'll be there active all throughout the next several days and the next several months, because if they find a way to win this game, there's going to be a ton of momentum going into the offseason from a donor standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, ton of things. So.
Yes, there is. You're not wrong. So, and then, definitely make sure if you haven't already, give us a follow at Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter or Instagram, and also make sure to hit that subscribe button as well, so you're notified whenever we release new content. Got a lot of exciting plans coming up here, and definitely make sure to don't want to miss out on those. But thank you all so much again for tuning in, and hey, we'll hopefully talk to y'all next week after a big win. So with that being said, hey, go Pack, y'all. We'll see y'all soon.